we've come to our next session of the day, Climate Action Strategies for Destinations and Operators, which I will be moderating. This panel will look at best practice examples for destinations and operators to move from climate strategy to tactics. We've heard a lot about that subject this morning from all of our speakers. So, to help me on this session, please welcome to the stage the Deputy Director General Promotion from Tourism Malaysia, Mr. Datuk Musa Haji Yusof, as well as the CEO from Visit Maldives, Toyib Mohammed, and giving the private sector perspective, the Director of Operations at Discover, Peter Christensen. Please welcome them on the stage. And while they're coming on stage, we do have a Q&A session. This is a panel discussion and Q&A. So during the Q&A, we'll be using Slido. So within a few minutes left, you'll be able to see the QR code to how to get onto Slido and submit your questions. And then I will go through them and read the questions from the audience. Please, gentlemen, have a seat. Anywhere. We're not that formal. Oh, except for this one. And I know you might be thinking, yes, it's all men. I will just let you guys know, 50% of the speakers at today's conference are women. Just happens that this one is all men. We did try getting women on this panel, but sometimes it's difficult. There are last-minute changes. But 50% of the speakers here are women. So just wanted to call out that elephant in the room. So please don't kill us for this. All right. So let's just jump right into it. And my first question will go to Dr. Musa. So, can you share an example of successful climate action strategy implemented by Tourism Malaysia that has significantly contributed to sustainable tourism development, and what were the key elements to its success?
Thank you, Paul, and distinguished panelists together with me, and cheerful, wonderful audience this morning. I think the questions very much directly to Tourism Malaysia on the climate action, but let me bring us all, basically, not directly to Tourism Malaysia, but Malaysia as a whole. I think I'm taking a cue from Peter this morning, that we need to also mention that things that maybe you should mention, And I think perhaps, even in my group, sometimes we are not sure that there's a policy, in Malaysia, but actually there's a national policy on climate change for this country that has been developed way back in 2009. And it was, through the prime ministers, as well as the different ministries. This is Ministry of Environment and Energy. So this is where then, on our side, when all the implementation, when it comes to climate change, we are basically following the policy that being outlined. So basically, on our side, just to make it easier, I think earlier, Natalie, I think was mentioning about tourism, all this kind of thing. And the things that for us, we make it very basic. What the Ministry and Tourism Malaysia did was, we work with the practitioners, the operators. And what we introduced through the Ministry, despite the fact we are not the one actually, the guardian of this, in a way, when it comes to all other ministries. But what we did way back in 2007 and 2008, we introduced One Malaysia Green, One Malaysia Clean. It is not a policy, it's just a campaign to get the whole Malaysia rally to make the country green and clean. Reason being, we receive a lot of complaints, especially on cleanliness of the destinations and even some parts of the countries. And this is where then we feel that, hey, let's do some campaign. And the reason why we're doing this campaign, because we are going for a Visit Malaysia year. So we need to make sure our house is properly clean and green in order to welcome them. And we got this campaign on, and we even got a mascot. We call it Mr. Bean, not Mr. Bean, the one, the comedian, but Mr. Bean, B-I-N, to make sure we put it at the right place and the rest. But this has become more or less as a Ministry of Tourism and Tourism Malaysia campaign alone. This is where the concerted effort, everything need to be all of us together in order to put it together. So therefore, we also come up before that, think tourism, act tourism. Think tourism, a lot of people, they think about tourism because of just now Peter was saying about the ROI, the per diem expenditures and everything, but they also act as tourism actually. So these are the things that we are putting in, but we are also basing ours just now on national policy on climate change. At the same time, we also come up again 2016 to 2025, the National Economic Ecotourism Plan. This is where also looking into the climate change and the recent National Tourism Policy 2020, it was launched in 2020 to 2030, also addressing some climate change on system and also responsible tourism. And the latest one, Malaysia, we have a 5 years plan. The recent 12th Malaysia plan, 2021 to 2025, also align about these issues on sustainable tourism and also responsible tourism. So very much on our side, actually, we are working into this and getting the practitioner to be involved. And we go into like community-based tourism, for example, getting them to be involved in sustainable, responsible tourism. And this is very much things that we can do because this is helping the local community. For example, way back in 2007, we introduced part of homestay experience. As homestay is not accommodation. We are selling homestay as experiences. So minimum 8 experiences can be, okay, the food, the cultures and the rest. But one of those is what we call a PAT, plant a tree. Just imagine we got 200 students coming from China. Each one of them will plant a tree. So the whole area with 200 bougainvillea, for example, or whatever other trees. So it will make the life of the local authority also much easier because they got somebody else planting the trees. And we're also doing it all over the destination, Sarawak, Sabah, and the rest. And this is helping us, and we do some education. I think we need to do it from the basic. And these are the things, some of this policy or campaign that we basically we have this policy on top, but we are looking all those trickle down to the rest. And we are working also with the local authorities because they are the regulators. The Ministry of Tourism or Tourism Malaysia, we are not. We are only creating the demand. We are not controlling the supply side. Therefore, we need them to look on the supply side to assist us. Whatever thing that we are preaching as a, as a marketeers, be translated into the product when they come into the destination.
Oh. Well, it's great to see what Malaysia's doing. We heard a bit of what Sarawak's doing this morning, so it's really great to hear the policies. And we'll get to the supply side later with Peter. But I'm going to move to you, Toyib. The Maldives is renowned for its efforts in climate action and sustainability, particularly since you're an island and the climate change really affects you guys. So can you share a specific initiative or project undertaken by Visit Maldives that has had a significant positive impact on the environment or local community?
Hello.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Good morning. Yes, you're right. Maldives faces a lot of challenges, especially due to the climate changes. And we, from the Visit Maldives side, we would love to create stories that would impact and help the local communities, and of course to the broader audience of the Maldivian community, which is, I think this would be an interesting discussion today because all of here, most of them are marketeers. As rightly said, Datuk Musa rightly said, we as marketeers has a very big tool to tell the world and the travelers that what we do will affect them as well. It's not only small island nations like us who will be affecting, it's the entire world that will be suffering as well. Although there's beautiful places like the island nations like Maldives, what you do may be affected to us as well. Anyways, about initiatives or something which we did that we think might be really useful is something we just recently finished. I want to tell you about it. It's being planned about few years back. It's a huge event, something that came up with our team, and then we played around it, and it was about Storytellers Conference. I'm so proud about it. We just finished it, and there were about, what we thought was, we wanted to mix and match all the formats of storytelling into 3 days of only half a day of conference. So what we started with was about creating a competition where who wants to come to Maldives for the conference. So that alone started generating a lot of user-generated content towards the destination. And then from that, we invited and we covered all expenses for over 80 storytellers across the globe. So we got from 25 different nationalities, and what they came, they saw from their real experiences what we are going through. We went for the sustainable efforts, what they are doing in the tourism industry, coral plantation, and the other thing is we also have the most sustainable fisheries method, pole and line. So they get to experience that as well. And then we were telling about the stories of our culture. It's thousands and thousands of years of old history. So all these, in a creative manner, we were trying to portray, and these storytellers get to experience it. And we are beyond thrilled, actually, because of the power of the storytelling and how effective it was towards the end, where everybody was so happy that most of them, their thing was, they were traveling to these resorts, which is one island, one resort concept. But this time, they get to see a lot of local products, like they were eating with the locals, living with the locals, and fishing with the locals. So those real content was telling giving a strong message to the world that Maldives is beyond a beach destination, a sun destination, and a sea destination. So I want to have you to show you a glimpse of what the Storytellers Conference was about. Paul, may I play? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to tell that story, right? Because I said the Maldives is greatly affected by rising waters as the effect of climate change. Let's move from the private sector. I mean, we heard a little bit what Intrepid does. So, Peter, can you just sort of tell us how Discover can provide an example how your company incorporates sustainability and climate action into your day-to-day operations? And how do you ensure that these strategies are effectively implemented across various destinations?
First of all, thank you for inviting us to Malaysia and Sarawak. This is my first time in Sarawak, so it's quite an interesting journey to be on. But yes, I can. And when I opened my pack this morning, when I checked in and registered, I was very happy to receive my bottle, my water bottle, because this is actually something that has been a big discussion point for Discover. And we are a private own company, and we, of course, have to deliver profits. And when you deliver profits, it's always sometimes difficult to make some hard decisions on how you want to run your business and what you want to represent. But what we have decided on is, and also starting to run some figures on, what do we actually produce in terms of waste for our travelers? So across Discover worldwide, we're in 15 countries around the world. We produce around 1.5 million plastic bottles a year for our travelers. Just a round figure that we expect this is what we are going to contribute back into the environment, is 1.5 million bottles of water a year. That doesn't count everything else, like tissues and napkins and what else you produce, what you eat in the restaurants around with our suppliers as well. So we have now decided we will actually use the same thing here. And the funny thing is, when we introduce this to our clients, it's actually a big plus point for us. It's a cost. It's absolutely a cost. But it's more so an effective marketing tool for us to put our foot down and say, enough is enough. We want to move away from putting plastics into our destinations, and we take the first step of doing that. But doing so is very scary. It's always scary to make that first step and say, what are the customers going to think about us? Are they going to accept this? This is our number one. And funny enough, it always turns out once you do it, once you implement it, the feedback has been incredibly positive. And once you explain to your customers why it is that you do what you do, they fully understand. They grasp it immediately within a few minutes. So the way we implement waste and the way we try to put the message, convey the message through the company throughout our 15 destinations is, for us, it's important that, first of all, our staff understands why. Why are we doing what we're doing? We can't, from the top down, from what we call our task force, tell everybody what to do in our organization. It needs to come from within. So when we implement a new policy or a new reduction of waste, or we talk to our suppliers, it does not come from the leadership. It comes from our people on the ground. I think that is the fundamental, most important thing you can do when you implement change in your company, whether they are sustainable related, whether they're climate related, or whether they're the future of the company. If it is led by the people on the ground, to put it into action, explain to our customers why, will become the easiest part of your job. So that is how we want to continue to implement it. And now we've started looking, some of our staff has now come up with new suggestions on changing all our uniforms to bamboo fiber. So we move away from any kind of synthetic, and we move all our uniforms, including our guides and drivers, onto bamboo fiber, so they're 100% organically produced, and they're biodegradable. So once we throw them out, they will disappear.
That's great.
No chemicals, nothing. But again, when you have your people around with you on that journey, they will come to you with these opportunities. And the funny thing, luckily enough, we're in a part of the world that is very, very driven on entrepreneurship. We have a lot of smart people in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Vietnam, in Japan. So once we start looking outside of the tourism business to help these young entrepreneurs put and set up their business, integrate them with our day-to-day operations, we help someone to live their dream, and we help to deliver a great sustainable experience for our clients. That is what we want to be known for at Discover.
Oh, great. That actually leads us to my next question for Dr. Musa. I mean, he talks about how he engages with his staff and the local communities. How does Tourism Malaysia engage and collaborate with the local communities and stakeholders to ensure the effective implementation of climate action strategies? Can you provide an example of where community involvement played a vital role in achieving sustainable outcomes?
Okay, Tourism Malaysia, we've been around since 1958. With a different name, we evolved from development, regulation as well to marketing. Now we are specifically on marketing and creating the demand. But to us, I think fellow Malaysian, if you look into way back during my time, I think some of us can share it here. When we went to the shop, grocery shop, when we buy your rice, it is not in a plastic bag. They will scoop it and put it in a brown bag, paper bag, and tie it up and bring back home. And it's now, actually, the thing's coming back now. We do not have a plastic bottle in a freezer or refrigerator. We just have some of us, we don't have even refrigerator. We have only the bottle water, so we don't have a plastic bottle. But I think these are the trends coming back, actually, in hotel. On our side, our engagement and collaboration with the communities is basically to assist them and as well to educate them. We are not alone, actually. We are moving because in Malaysia, we have a federal, we have the state, and we have the local authorities. And most of the local authorities, what we call it, the PBT here, most of them in their strategic plan, they have tourism parts within the content of their strategic plan. The only thing whether they implement it or not. So what we did is that we call all the PBT or the local authorities, I sit down with them, and we discuss. For example, close to my area is Putrajaya or Sepang. We call the local authority or Sepang. In theirs, there's also a tourism thing within theirs. So therefore, recycling, the green thing, is this the local authorities' purviews in a way? We collaborate with them in order to engage and collaborate with the local communities that's doing tourism. So what we did was earlier, because one of our objective is to uplift the socio-economic benefits to the rural area. So we went with them, we created homestay. We created homestay 40 years ago. The community-based tourism actually in Malaysia started 40 years ago. But it was known as homestay, not as community-based tourism. This is where it evolved, And for example, some homestay, they are very creative on their own, especially here in Sarawak, as well as some other parts in Malaysia. For example, the banana trees, the trunk of the banana trees. Instead of buying a box proper, they make it, into a nice gift boxes. And we came in, we purchased all those and become a gift to the tourists coming in or to some of our delegation coming into Malaysia. And we produced a lot of brochures previously, for example. We train them also, reduce your brochures because that's papers coming from trees, that we go into interactive digital brochures, for example. So these are the things that we are doing. We reduce in a way slowly as per our, what we call it, NEP, National Ecotourism Plan, because within our National Ecotourism Plan 2016 to 2025, we have this slogan that we always mention, that tourism protects, preserve and conserve nature, culture and heritage. And this is where we always, in the speech of the ministers, for example, we always mention this to them. So we are not only mentioning it, but we walk the talk by discussing with all the relevant, with the State Tourism Board and others, that we do a collaborative effort to get the local and communities involvement into this. So I think by doing so, I think there are a lot of things, they feel, because we, for example, what Discover is mentioning, we mentioned that, the tourists coming in, they do not want to see a plastic bottle. They wanted to feel good. They wanted to contribute. We also work into volunteerism, for example. Volunteerism, in Malaysia, when you mention volunteerism, it is you're doing something for free. But anyway, some other parts, they are willing to pay, buying a package, coming to a destination, to volunteer themselves in doing things. So we can create something that, it is income for the tour company, for the local community, but at the same time getting the tourists to participate into this. And with this after COVID-19, we have this term slow tourism. I think we should take advantage of this slow tourism to get them in, working on the experiential part of whatever thing. It's not like 1 hour here, you go in, they come out and get into another destination, but immerse yourself, be there, and get to, you feel good about it later on. And we are doing this with some tour operators and the rest, and also the community need to know about it. Again, like I said, this concept of getting the local also involved, because when the traffic, the tourists coming in, they're also contributing to certain parts of, like I said, polluting, So they are the one that coming actually helping the local, and the local also, they exchange ideas and the rest. And we are looking at also getting the schools, the education. For example, I'm also a part-time lecture chapter. We are getting more universities now. I'm a part-time lecture chapter chairman. Getting more universities become our member. We are creating a special student wing within the part-time lecture chapter, because I remember previously we were there, we are talking about PATA next generation. And these are the people that are going to maintain the whole thing that we are discussing today. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Dr. Musa. And you know, you touched on a bit before, Toyib, about sort of how you sort of integrate climate action strategies into marketing and promotion. But do you have other examples of that, how you sort of integrate it within promotions? And also, just the second part of that, what messaging campaigns have been effective in attracting responsible and sustainable travelers?
As I said before, every tourist board will try to portray their destination, and tell the stories to the world. So these sustainable efforts, the crisis of the climate, all these stories now has a lot of weight in it from each destination, because especially after the pandemic, we are seeing a lot of travel sentiments towards the travelers travel into more sustainable destinations. In fact, 1 in 3, it seems, to be looking into options of booking a sustainable property. So it's not a joke anymore, it's not a key word anymore, it's the thing now. So we have to be telling the stories related to sustainability, and then in terms of Maldives, we have, yes, a lot of action strategies, global strategies, which we follow as well, and how we portray ourselves is through different means. I think it's one very important thing we started doing was bringing in those who are doing things together with us in our press conferences, or especially when we do have international press conferences during the WTM, ITB, and the big shows. We started using these those people who are running these initiatives, the Blue Ocean Prosperity, the whale shark protecting thing. So it gives another edge to the destination, while we boringly talk about these things always, you know, who wants to see our faces all the time? So we can bring in more flavor, telling the stories from them, the locals telling about their sustainability efforts. So those things, because we as you saw in the video, we have a lot of beautiful places, but very fragile. As you know, the biodiversity, the climate change, and the climate actions goes hand in hand. And we have a huge responsibility to defend our biodiversity, because we are 99% water-based country. So what we do to the biodiversity beneath the ocean affects us as well. So things like single-use plastic and things has to be not being used. In 2023, we are phasing out the single-use plastic. So now we have started imposing a tax on it. So we almost all the properties, especially in the resorts, everyone is not using the single-use plastic. So which is also good in a way, because there's so much of less single-use stuff. And by 2023, we are hoping to not see any single-use plastic, meaning those stories has to be told. It's the tourists, it's the visitors who loves those kind of things, especially when you said about the water bottle. Those are the simple things we can do to minimize those things. And I think, because again, I'm saying what we do and what we tell the world about those things we do creates a real good image of a destination. I think it's more than what we really thought of. You know, it meant a lot, actually.
Right. Well, I really want to do some questions from the audience, so if you could just put up the slide do thing so that people can know how to submit questions. Right, so if you want to submit any questions to our speakers, just go to slido.com, enter in the number there, or scan the QR code, submit your questions, and I'll be happy to ask them of our panelists. So while you're doing that, I'll go to I'll go to Peter. So we talked a little bit about supply chain. So, I mean, what does responsible supply chain management play in climate action strategies at Discover, and how do you work with local suppliers and partners to ensure sustainable practices are upheld throughout the tourism value chain, which has to be difficult at times?
Very, very difficult. And it's a very good question, because it's something that consumes a lot of our time when we need to go through this, because again, you can convey a message, but you need to stay true to your word, right, for your customers. If this is part of your company's DNA, and this is who you are, and this is what you stand for, similar to Malaysia and the Maldives, this is who they are. This is your DNA. This is what you sell. If you don't deliver, it can backfire very quickly. And why wouldn't you deliver? But you need to make sure that your supply chain behind all of these promises and the commitments are also true to their words. So the way that we help our suppliers do this, because not everybody is in the same mindset yet as where I would say Discover is at the moment. Show the way, lead the way, give them example, explain again why are we doing what we're doing. If they don't understand the why, you set the criteria for them and you help them through it. We work with a lot of local suppliers, and again, they are looking at the bottom line. They sometimes have an investor that they need to deliver the final numbers to, so do we all. But again, it is about making sure they understand, if you commit to this, it's a long-term solution, it's a long-term strategy, but it's going to benefit us, it's going to benefit our travelers. And I think something that we took out of COVID, or something I personally took out of COVID, when we had a bit of time to sit down and think, what's the world, what is it all about, and how can this help us, how can we be better coming out of COVID, is we have to remember the essential piece of travel is people don't want to experience what they got at home. People want to experience different cultures, they want to see different things. Don't change what we have. Use the brown paper bag for your rice. That is what people want to see. That is what we need to give them. That is what we need to go back to, but we can modify the experience a little bit. But I think that was something that I took out of COVID, that we want to deliver to our customers, and we have to make sure our suppliers remember, don't adapt to the customer, keep the way you have done things, and continue on your path of delivering great experiences. That is the essential thing of why we travel. We travel to see and experience different things. It's that simple.
Well, definitely. I always say that, that's the whole point, right? You want to, especially interact with local communities. We'll move over. Sid, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in. If not, we'll just continue right along here. So this is to Dr. Musa. What are some of the key economic benefits that destinations can derive from adopting climate action strategies, and how does Tourism Malaysia balance sustainability goals with the need for economic growth?
Thank you, Paul. Again, like I said, through the national policy on climate change, and it trickled down to respective ministries, to our ministry especially, when we come out with the national ecotourism policy, 2016 to 2020, and we relaunch it again until 2025 or 26. This is where then we emphasize a lot more again on sustainability as well as responsible tourism, part of the strategy within the study. And what we've done also is that we are looking at to improve the synergy between ecotourism and sustainable conservation. And again, I think our fellow speakers earlier talking in Intrepid, I think we're talking about what's sustainability. I think this is where it is not only like on certain things, but it is the whole thing, waste management and the rest. I think within the Ministry of Tourism, whereby we are also the regulator when it comes to licensing of hotels, for example. We are also working with the PBTs and authorities on other ministries, looking at green hotel, for example, and also come into the waste management control, island, there's some studies, even paid by Ministry of Tourism, looking into islands, how to develop and properly manage the islands and national parks and the rest. I think we are fortunate here in Malaysia because we got the state government very responsible as well, and also within the government agencies within the state as well as federal that having their own policy. And what we can do is basically to put them together. Make it, everybody, we are not working in silos, because one of our finding in the national tourism policy is that we are working in silos. So we need to be together, as well as to adapt this climate exchange that we are already putting in. Even, for example, the capital city of Kuala Lumpur, they have also their plan, for example, 70-30, to reduce the gas emission by 70% by the year 2030. So these are the things they are doing for that, cities, the most polluted. Anyway, the city is always there. I'm not saying that Kuala Lumpur is polluted, but this is where you get a lot of vehicles and that. If you see here in Sarawak, you see some buses running around. It's a hydrogen bus. So it's a hydrogen bus. They introduced it last year, I think, and then these are things that I think we can be proud of. And we're also having a lot more, I think, some of these electric charges at the R&R and some places. Even Tesla talking to us, mentioning to us that they're looking at some places, they're going to put 3 or 4 charging for their vehicle, electric vehicle. But still again, we need to look into consolidating all this. And also, despite the fact we are charging electricity, but still the power plant, are they, is it a hydro kind of thing, or is it still using coal or something like that? These are the things we need to take a look of the whole holistic approach into it. And this is then by talking to by having this directly to the practitioners again, the islanders, for example, and some of these communities within Malaysia, for them to understand the benefit of tourism if you engage into this responsible tourism as well as sustainability. So I think this is where then we can also going into these climate change strategies that we put forward. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Now, so I do want to get some of these questions, so let's try to answer these questions quickly from your opinion. So we'll start from the top. I think it's a great question in the beginning here. Should sustainable tourism initiatives be made mandatory by the government rather than to rely on the private sector to take action?
Again, sorry. Is
so
it to me?
Should sustainable tourism initiatives be made mandatory by the government instead of relying on the private sector?
Okay. Well, I think it is not. I mean, government cannot be putting it mandatory to everybody all the time. Putting a cane to everybody. But you need this can be a volunteer things coming from the private sectors. But of course, sometimes we need to put some policies in a way in order to make sure that, therefore, the private sector will see, oh, these are the things that we need to follow suit. So this is where then the engagement need to be there. For example, when we put some mandatory or some set of guidelines, perhaps there's some incentive to the private sectors to take action. It is not just you have to do A, B, C, and D, but there may be some incentive that we need to put forward to the private sector. Therefore, they would also look into this kind of, that set of SOPs for them. I'm not saying that it must be a mandatory thing. Thank you.
But I think there's an advantage in the private sector taking the lead, because of course it's a mix, should be there. But for example, like the reefs of the resorts seems to be much healthier than the local islands. Of course, there are rules and regulations that that has to be taken in the local islands as well. But still, recent research has shown that it's much more healthier in the resorts. So it's basically the private sector who is taking a good lead in that. So it's a fair mix, which is going to be a good thing for the nation.
From my side, I think it needs to be a collaboration, and I don't think we can sit around and wait for each other. We need to action this. Yeah. If someone wants to put the foot forward first, go and do it. Don't sit and wait for anybody to do it. Yes, the government can definitely set regulations into into policies. But again, we can't always sit around and wait for that. We need to drive this ourselves as the private sector and together with the government. The collaboration is extremely important, I think.
Okay. All right. And these questions are moving around here. So let's go with the, huh? The over-tourism question. I do want the over-tourism question. That's, where is that? Okay, so I think it's, with 2002 witnessing strong figures for tourism arrivals, how prepared are destinations to control over-tourism and protect the environment? Especially now that everyone's focusing on, I mean, numbers, right? I mean, you're trying to recover from that. But are we just overlooking it, or are we good at controlling it? Are we prepared to are we prepared for that looking into the future?
Sure. I hear a lot of different models on how to do this, right? How do you control who comes in and who can come in and who do you allow to come in, or do you do it by a revenue figure or a money figure, or do you do it by country figure? I think you need to make sure that you appeal to a certain audience when you have a destination, and as a DMC as well, right? The hard part, and I think when we go through this transition as what we are, DMC company, destination management company, we go through a transition where we now get into a phase where we have to select our partners we work with. What is our DNA? Does that match our partners? If it does, great. We are a great match for each other. But we also have to accept this. Companies we don't have a DNA that matches with, that maybe focuses on this mass tourism, that we want to say, look, I think you're a great company, but we are not great for each other, and we will have to move on. So the mass tourism, how we get rid of it, it's also about how we distribute our offerings and our products in the companies. I don't think you're ever going to get rid of the mass tourism. It's always going to come at some point. Yes, we can work on different policies. I'm yet to see one that works 100%. I've not seen that yet, and I don't think we're going to see one.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to take a lot of just trial and error right over the time.
Yeah. But I guess besides over-tourism, without knowing, there's things happening. For instance, we don't have over-tourism at the moment, but we have populated sightseeing. Like that, especially like whale shark watching, the manta rays. So those has to be regulated. Those has to be done in a right manner, because that is not what it could be termed as over tourism, but still it has a negative effects on the biodiversity as well.
So then is Maldives currently regulating that, or?
In certain parts, yes, but we are having some challenges regulating it, because we are talking about 200 big giant whale sharks and people jumping over it just to take selfies, just to show off. But imagine, it's not only that. You have, as a tourist, as a visitor, you have a responsibility for that. But we are trying to educate them, but because so many boats come in at the same time, and because when they are disturbed, they migrate slowly. So we have to know that as well. We have to educate as well.
I think that hopefully answered one of the questions from
I
Sarah.
think, Paul, on Malaysia, if I can add on that,
sure,
when it comes to over-tourism, I think on our side, still we have this debate, but on our side, we are also looking, there must be a stand whereby we're not looking at figures, how millions of arrivals. We are looking at quality tourism. So this is where we also diversify. For example, instead of having leisure traffic coming, mass tourism, we are also looking into my sectors. Maybe there are less numbers, but quality-wise. And in terms of regulatory, we have national park, for example, mentioned by the honourable ministers earlier, because they are the one that, this is really a mandatory area that we're coming into national park, for example. There's a carrying capacity we are talking about. For example, here in, Sabah, there's a carrying capacity. Certain numbers of people, divers, can dive and seeing all these shark, for example. So by imposing this, I think the government imposing it. But at the same time, the private sector, they are the one also looking to, because of this coral bleaching and the rest, they even remove their own resorts from an island. and make the island empty. Therefore, the water, part of the SDGs, the thing can grow back, and it become a proper tourism, and you can charge a lot more because it's quality back to nature. So this carrying capacity, I think we can impose into that. Looking into it, but having the national park and some others authorities looking at that would help a lot. Thank you.
I think our time's up. I think you did have a slide that you wanted to show. Is that correct, Dr.
Yeah,
Musa? Yes.
maybe can I have the slides? This is something that we are looking at. We get can I have it on the screen?
You can put this down and pull up Dr.
Yeah.
Musa's slide.
This is something that dynamic connections between, among the travelers and tourism. This is, in a way, in tourism, not only Tourism Malaysia alone talking about tourism, we have also these Malaysian productivity corporations. They're developing this tourism productivity nexus. There's a dedicated nexus on tourism. There are 14 nexus, digital, be it sustainable, be it ecotourism and the rest. And this is something that it is from the bottom of our heart. You see that Malaysian, when we greet people, sometimes we shake our hand, but due to COVID, not many people would like to shake their hands already. So we're going back to 2000, the year 2000, when we introduced Malaysia to Malaysia, put your hand on your heart. Why? Because those on the screen that you can see, taking care of the environment with your thumb, looking at heritage, looking at the culture, unity, as well as this ethic. So when people ask, especially fellow Malaysian, when you put this hand here, what does it represent? It presents those virtues, the ecosystem of tourism industry within those actually. So at least this is simple campaign that among us we sat down together at zero cost. We don't have a consultant doing this. We are doing it on our own. And this is some of the airlines people putting this up because they need to greet passengers into the airlines. Then we adopt it into some of these industries related things. So I think fellow Malaysian and the rest, if you come to Malaysia, you can put your hand on your chest and welcome them into Malaysia by having this ecosystem into your head, whereby we are looking into climate change as well as sustainability and responsible tourism. Thank you, Paul.
And that's the best way to end this panel discussion. So thank you guys so much for that very interesting panel discussion. Sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but they will be here over the next few days, so you can always come up there and ask them directly. So big round of applause to Dr. Musa, Toyib, and Peter. Thank you so much. Did the heart of the hand, right? All right. Thank you.